This is the best gimbal for action camera users in 2024. I recently broke my favorite higher-end action camera gimbal. I had owned this gimbal right here, what's left of it, for several years, and I loved using it with my action cameras. Many a GoPro, DJI, and Insta360 camera had been used with this gimbal, and it hadn't let me down. But falling on this gimbal was more than this poor gimbal could take. And unfortunately, this specific gimbal in here, it's no longer manufactured. So this led me to search for a new gimbal for my action cameras. I needed a gimbal that could support the weight of my action cameras, as well as support the weight of accessories, such as ND filters, anamorphic lens, as well as microphone and light accessories. There are budget gimbals out there that I like if you're just attaching your action camera without adding any of those accessories. But if you want to add those accessories, you do need a gimbal that can support more than the 200 grams that a lot of the budget gimbals can support. And naturally, I wanted a gimbal that would provide the best quality for the best price. So after doing some research and testing, I found the gimbal that I like best. In fact, this gimbal is so good, I actually like it better than the gimbal that I fell on and broke. My new favorite gimbal for my action cameras is the FeiyuTech Scorp Mini 2. And in this video, I'm going to give you 9 reasons why this gimbal is my favorite one for action cameras in 2024. First of all, I love this gimbal because this gimbal can easily support the weight of the action cameras that I own, but it also can support a payload up to 2.65 pounds. So if I'm mounting a heavier action camera like the Ace Pro here, and I've got the ND filter on it, maybe a light and a microphone, all of those combined might weigh about 400 grams. 400 grams is no problem for a gimbal that supports 2.65 pounds, which is approximately 1,200 grams. So I would only be a third of the way there with this. But the key with this gimbal is it does well stabilizing lighter objects too. I own some of the nicer DJI gimbals, and as much as I love those gimbals, those are great with my mirrorless cameras. With action cameras, they're sometimes not so great because the action camera is almost too light for that gimbal. I find myself having to add some extra weight for it to stabilize it properly. Otherwise, the camera moves a little bit too much on there because it is so light. And of course, as you might guess, with a payload of 2.65 pounds, this gimbal can support other cameras other than action cameras as well. So if you own other cameras and you want to use a gimbal with them, as long as your camera weighs less than 2.65 pounds with the lens, chances are this gimbal will work for that. The second reason I like this gimbal are the instructions. Now, if you've bought gimbals before, you've probably had the experience I've had. A lot of those gimbals have little to no instructions, and if they do have instructions, those instructions are often unclear and hard to follow, and they're not really that great. But this gimbal comes with a nice manual here, and it shows you step by step how to balance this gimbal and how to use it, and it's very simple and easy to understand. In addition, FeiyuTech has an app that you can install on your phone, and it's got a tutorial video that you can follow along for all of the different things you can do with this gimbal, such as balancing it, how to use it, how to pair it with Bluetooth, all kinds of stuff. In fact, their tutorials are so good, I don't feel the need to make any for using this gimbal because their content is already so good. So definitely check out that content if you do buy this gimbal. It will help you a lot. I went through it the first time setting it up just to make sure I was doing everything correctly, and I had no problems. The third reason I love this gimbal is if you're a solo creator like I often am, this has built-in AI tracking on it right here. And this tracking is very good. And I like it that it's not a separate module that you have to worry about falling off the gimbal. And you don't have to have an app or anything else for the AI to work. The AI is built into this, and the AI tracker allows you to use different gestures to have this gimbal do what you want it to do. For instance, use the OK gesture to tell the gimbal to start tracking you, and the light will turn from red to green. If you want it to stop tracking you, you just put your thumbs together like this, and it'll stop. And the light will go from green back to red. In addition, you can use the double L gesture for framing. So if you want to frame something a little more narrow or a little more wide, you can do that with the tracker. And the first time you do the double L, the green light is going to blink really fast. And then when the subject moves to the desired position, you do the double L again, and the green light is going to go to solid green. The fourth reason I love this gimbal is it comes with pretty much all of the accessories that you'll need. It's got the mounting bracket here. It's got the action camera mount that comes with it. It does have a phone mounting bracket. And it has this box that's just full of cables. So all of the cables in here, there is USB-C to audio. There is a couple USB-C to audios. There's USB-A to USB-C. there's USB-C to Lightning, and so forth. There's a bunch of cables in here. What this means is you're able to connect pretty much any camera to this gimbal via the charging port down here, and you can actually provide charge to your camera. And the great thing with action cameras is if you want to use them on this gimbal and you don't want to have the battery installed for whatever reason, let's say you're filming in really hot conditions and you want your action camera to run cooler, you can have the battery removed, and this gimbal will power your action camera without needing the battery to be present. So that's a really great feature. In addition, if you just want to keep your battery charged up while it's on here, you can connect it via the charging cable. It'll work great that way as well. And the gimbal does, of course, come with a nice hard shell case right here where you can keep everything contained. Inside, it's got all the nice cutouts here, which is also great. It does come with a wireless magnetic fill light. This light you can mount in various places on the gimbal if you would like the light. And of course, if you do want to use your phone with it, it does have this smartphone bracket right here. I love it when a gimbal comes with a good case like this. It's a great place to put it so it doesn't get broken when you're not using it. The fifth reason I love this gimbal, it has the 1/4" 20 thread mount on the bottom here. So what this means is this gimbal can be mounted to a tripod or anything that has the 1/4" 20 mounting screw. In addition, this gimbal does come with its own tripod feet, so you can attach this here. And again, this is great for solo creating because there are probably going to be situations where you want this gimbal stationary on the ground or setting on a surface so that you can set it there and have it film you. So this is a great feature to have as well. And in addition, I often like to keep this on here because this extension, it folds up and it gives you an easy way to grip it with 2 hands if you just want a little extra stability, or if this gets a little heavy with 1 hand. It's great to be able to put 2 here. Something else I love about this gimbal is when you're balancing it, after you have your camera on here and you've done the balancing, this has an auto-tune motor power option. And what this does is this gimbal will run a test with the weight of your camera here, and it's going to fine-tune each of the motors on here to give you the best stability and the best look to your footage. It's really easy to run the auto-tune motor power option. All you have to do is run it from the touchscreen on the gimbal right here, which, by the way, this is a touchscreen. It's not a huge screen, but it is touch, which is very cool. That way you don't have to mess around with random joysticks or other buttons trying to figure out which one works. So that is also a great feature. But you can, of course, use the app on your phone as well to run that function. Either one will allow you to do it. And then once it's done fine-tuning the motors, it'll take about a minute. It's going to tell you calibration is complete, and then you're good to go. And if you are installing a different type of device, I recommend doing that auto motor tuning each time you install a different device. If you're just using the same action camera on all the time, then that tuning should have you good to go for a while. The next thing I love about this gimbal is FeiyuTech has a list on their website of all the cameras this supports with the Bluetooth functionality. So first of all, if you own a GoPro, this gimbal supports pretty much any GoPro via Bluetooth from the GoPro Hero 5 and newer. Now, it doesn't support all functions via Bluetooth because this gimbal only has so many buttons on here, but the website also lists each and every feature it does support via Bluetooth and which features it doesn't support. So up front, you're able to know what you're buying when you buy this gimbal. You're able to know what this can and can't do for you via Bluetooth. So I really like it that FeiyuTech is transparent about that. It's super helpful. And of course, if you're going to use a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, it does list a bunch of those models as well, and what is and isn't supported via Bluetooth. But oftentimes when I'm using this gimbal, I don't necessarily pair it to Bluetooth anyway, because with some of these cameras, I have the remote that comes with them, like the Insta360 one that I can wear on my arm. And sometimes for the GoPro and the DJI, I would rather use the app on my phone to control them. So you don't have to pair the Bluetooth to use them with this, but it is an option if you don't want to have to push the power button while it's on the gimbal. But it's not a problem to manually push that button either. But if you are doing that, I recommend you cradle the gimbal here a little bit, so you're not putting a lot of pressure on the motors when you do that. And of course, the 8th reason I love this gimbal is it does provide phenomenal stabilization. That's obviously a very important thing. If you're using a gimbal to stabilize your camera, with the stabilization turned off, it needs to be able to stabilize well. And with my testing of this gimbal, before I decided it was the one to replace my broken one, I did some running with it with each of these cameras, and I've got some sample footage I'll have playing here as I talk. Did a really good job with the running. Obviously, when you're running, there's going to be a little bit of this on a gimbal. But if I was running with my action camera handheld and stabilization off, the footage would be unusable without the gimbal. But if you're walking with this gimbal and going heel to toe, there's going to be very little to no bounce at all. the footage is going to look really professional and great. And of course, the main reason you want to get a gimbal with your action camera to begin with is if you're using ND filters and doing the 180-degree shutter angle, or if you're using an anamorphic filter with your GoPro, which I love to do. You can't have hypersmooth turned on the GoPro when doing that, otherwise you're going to have ghosting and jitter with your footage, which will make it unusable. So that really is the reason to have a gimbal to begin with your action camera. And for low light filming with stabilization off and the shutter speed at 1/50 or 160, depending if you're doing 24 frames per second or 30, this gimbal does phenomenal in low light. And the ninth reason this gimbal is my favorite action camera gimbal in 2024, this gimbal does have 5 different follow modes. A lot of gimbals do have 4 follow modes, but this one has a 5th mode, which is actually pretty cool. So you have the pan follow mode, the pan and tilt follow mode, the FPV mode, the lock mode, and the flash follow mode. I find myself using the lock mode and the pan and tilt mode most often. Those 2 modes are my favorite. They help me get really good, smooth, professional looking footage with an action camera. But I will say the flash follow mode is kind of an interesting one to play with on here. What this mode does is it allows all 3 axes on here to follow the movement of your hand. So how you move this, the axes can move along with that. It kind of gives a really immersive feel to your footage. So depending on what you're filming, that mode may be one you want to use as well. Speaking of action cameras, in the year 2024, if you'd like more help in figuring out which action camera is best for you, check out this video right here.